Hello and welcome to a very special episode of the season so far. It's the turn of Liverpool Football Club. We've got our assorted guests from the world of sport, mainly Liverpool and football. Quite fortunate enough to be joined by Chris McKenna. How are you, Chris?
Very well, James. Glad to be back on and seeing your face again.
Yeah, love that. It's always great pleasure to see your face. Try not to look at it before I go to bed, lads. And we're also joined by Liverpool fan Joseph. You're in Liverpool at the moment, Joe, so it's good to have a Scouser alongside us on the show. How are you, mate?
I'm all good, James.
Love that.
I'm all good. Looking forward to it.
Likewise, Joe. Great to have you with us. We've also got long-serving Liverpool fan, pitch extraordinaire pundit, and one of the stars of season one, none other than Rohan. How are you, mate?
Yeah, good, mate. Good to be back.
Love
Good to be back. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm really well. And a man that doesn't need much introduction. He's always around, none other than Simon Walton. Great to have you back, Si. You okay?
I'm all right, mate. Very well, thank you.
Good. That was the longest introduction in history. Let's start talking about Liverpool Football Club. I'm guessing we should start with the players that have come in over the summer and how they've done so far. So initially, I'm going to go to Rohan with this one. How do you think the players that have brought in are recruited have done so far?
I think it makes sense to start with Nunes because he's obviously the big money signing. A lot of pressure on him with Mane leaving. I think it's been a stop-start for him with the red card and then being suspended for 3 games. Scored on his debut, scored in the Community Shield as well. So it started off solid, started off really well. I think it's still too early to judge him, but I don't know, just from the eye test, even though his stats look all right, because he has scored a few goals and his minutes to go is good as well, because he's not played that many minutes yet and he's bagged a few goals. Just from the eye test, though, he just looks a bit unnatural. He's got a bit of I don't know if it's the Lukaku vibe to him, where he looks awkward, his touch looks awkward. I feel like he's scuffed more shots than he's hit clean yet so far. I think even a few of his goals were scuffed. But the thing is, because of our fullbacks and the amount of chances we create, I think he will score goals, but I think he's just going to be. It's too early to judge. I think he'll do well. I think it's too early to judge, but I think he will bag goals. But I think he'll just be one of those players where people think, "Oh, he's looked awkward there," but you look at the end of the game and he's bagged a couple goals. And his movement has been top for us, though. His movement has been top for us. I've noticed that when he's playing and when he's not playing, because Firmino obviously covers deep, he gives us that different dimension. He's always running in behind. He's always looking for that ball to be fed in behind. But yeah, I think it's too early to judge. We've had a bit of an unsettled side as well with the injuries. I think once he's had a run of games, I think any striker, you've got to judge them once they've had a run of games. They need rhythm. Any player needs rhythm. So I think once he's had 4 or 5 games on the bounce, played 90 minutes, then it will be in a better place to judge him.
I think you make some great points there. Chris, how has Nunes been perceived so far on Merseyside? From looking on the outside in, there's been questions over his temperament for obvious reasons. How and what have you made of him so far?
Yeah, I think the question of his temperament is a bit harsh. I mean, obviously he did allow himself to be wound up in that Crystal Palace game, and it was a brilliant job really by Anderson. I think it was the defender. He just got at him, and because he knew what he was up against. He knows he was up against a very talented forward, but he maybe just saw that if I niggle at this guy, and maybe he saw a few early reactions in the game, and he thought, I'll keep at him, I'll get him to snap. And that happens a lot in football on all levels. You see that in Sunday League, you see that at the top level, just people having a nibble and just seeing if they can get somebody to lash out or take them off the game. And obviously it worked perfectly. I don't think there's any long-term fears at Liverpool that he's got a temperament issue or that it's going to be a regular thing. I think it's a one-off. I think he'll have learned a harsh lesson there because he obviously let down his team. And the 3 games out then have obviously disrupted his rhythm, and it hasn't helped Liverpool. And as Rohan has made a good point, he does make a lot of runs. He does have a lot of good movement, but it's very different to what Liverpool have used to be playing with over the last few years. Salah and Mane make the runs from the wide angles. They come inside and either with or without the ball. And Firmino was that kind of link player who kind of stitched it all together, whereas Nunes is now somebody who's making them runs from the middle. So maybe the midfield isn't kind of finding those runs because they're not used to him. And I think City have found that a little as well with Haaland. The difference is with Haaland, he just always finds a way to score. If you watch the early City games this season, they were struggling as well. He would be making runs, and even though they've got brilliant players like Kevin De Bruyne, maybe he wasn't finding them straight away because he wasn't used to it for a while. I've seen players make those runs. So I think Nunes needs to adapt to the Premier League, but also I think Liverpool need to adapt to him. And I agree with Rowan. It's far too early to be saying whether he's is he going to make or isn't he? It's going to take a while. It's going to take a few months. He's got to try and get goals in the meantime to kind of keep that pressure off him.
You mentioned Sadio Mane. One player I was quite surprised Liverpool let go, especially with the big contract handed out to Mo Salah. For me, they haven't looked the same since Mane's departure. Do you think Jurgen Klopp underestimated the influence and impact that losing Mane would have?
Certainly not. I think Jurgen Klopp knew more than anybody how important Sadio Mane was to that Liverpool team and how good he is. I think the decision more came down from Mane's side. He felt he wanted a new challenge. He had a year left on his contract. He could have just sat it out another year and left for nothing. I don't think he wanted to do that. I don't think he wanted it to become a big saga next year. He had the opportunity to go to Bayern Munich this summer, which was a new league for him to have a crack at, to be playing at a top team in another league, should I say. And I think he kind of made that clear to the club. And I think a decision was made at the club to think, well, he's given us great service. He's made it clear that he doesn't want to stay, that he doesn't want to sign a new contract. So we have to develop, we have to move on from Sadio Mane. We may as well do that this summer when Darwin Núñez is available, when we can still get a fee for Sadio Mane. Liverpool, it wasn't that Liverpool took a decision or Jurgen Klopp took a decision going, oh, Sadio Mane's a bit past it, we'll just let him go now, we can get better players. They knew they were losing a great player, somebody who's still got a few great years left in him. So I don't think they underestimated losing him. They knew how big of a problem that would be, but I think they were in a position where he wanted to go, they couldn't keep him, and they made it quite, I suppose, a decision to say, right, we'll let you go on your terms here for what you've done for this club, which I think was fair to do. But they're going to miss him. They're going to have to adapt to life without him. But big players move on, and that's what the big teams do over the years. Great Manchester United teams lost big players. They rebuilt. They went again. They either brought through a new player or they bought a new player, and that's what Liverpool have to do now. They have to evolve. Jurgen Klopp's there for a few more years. He's signed a new contract. So it's now his job is to kind of evolve this team, not revolutionise it, not rip it all up, but it's to kind of evolve it and get it going into it, keeping it successful and developing the players they have there now.
They have got an ageing squad, Liverpool. If you look through
aging in midfield, I think.
Aging in midfield, certainly. Yeah. Aging in midfield. Jurgen Klopp, before the start of the season, was adamant that he wouldn't need another midfielder. The fact that he's changed his way of thinking in that, do you think that's a downfall for Liverpool? The fact that the midfield are sort of aging and haven't got the legs that they did have in the past, regardless of Milner on the fitness stats. Simon, go on, Chris. Sorry, mate.
No, go ahead.
Simon, what are your thoughts on it?
I think if you look at Liverpool's midfield on paper, in terms of if you rate every single player that they can call on to play centre midfield and you line it up against the other top 2 or 3 clubs, I'm not sure that you would pick the group of players that Liverpool have at the minute. People keep telling me about Thiago and Fabinho, but I made this comment the other day. It's all right having a Ferrari on your drive, but if you can't use it because it keeps breaking down, what's the point in having it? And I think the point and the amount of games that Liverpool play and need to play, I think their strength in depth in midfield is weaker compared to everybody else, without a shadow of a doubt. They've got players in James Milner, who, as you know, I'm a massive fan of, Jordan Henderson, who's done unbelievable for the club. But as they say, I'm well aware of this, every dog has its day, and it comes to a point where you do need to freshen it up. And if you stand still, and I know Jurgen Klopp's been very loyal to certain players, but if you stand still at times, then you get overtaken. And I think Liverpool as a midfield unit have certainly being overtaken by other clubs. And again, I'll say it, people will say, but Thiago's this unbelievable ball player, but how many games has he averaged? How many games does he play? How reliable is he for a team wanting to win the title? Fabinho's this, that and the other. How many games has he played? I do think he's a top world-class holding midfield player when he plays, but if you haven't got it in your makeup to play, listen, not every player plays 100% of the games. That's just the way modern football is, but I think they lack in that area, and I think it was a massive mistake, probably highlighted by the shortfall in the attacking areas as well now, that I think they missed a trick not signing a midfielder without a shadow of a doubt.
Van Dijk got a lot of praise, especially his first sort of year and a half at Liverpool. Has his form dipped off? Has it changed? Has he not given the consistency of performance that we saw initially from Van Dijk? Joseph, what are your thoughts on Van Dijk at the moment?
Yeah, I've heard a few people saying that about Van Dijk, not living up to the expectations, taking it easy, backing out the challenges even I've heard people speaking about, but because he hasn't attended the World Cup before, and this is his last chance to say, and so they're saying, is he backing out of things just to get to a World Cup so he knows he's going to be fit for it, he's going to be playing. I can't see his expectations of him. He set that bar so high. If any little bit of dip of form or anything, you're going to get judged by it. Especially as well when I'm coming back from that long-term injury, what he received. He come back the end of last season and that, and he was getting back into all the run of things, and that this season with the World Cup, that might be playing on his mind a little bit, but it's the place he's being used to playing with as well. You've got like Robinson, you've got Trent. You can't just put the pressure on Van Dijk saying the defence hasn't performed because Van Dijk hasn't performed. You've got to look at the individual players like Kanate. He's had that injury, what stopped him from achieving what he took off from last season. You've got Joel Matip, what come back, who's done what he always does. It's just this consistency of games and getting that right partnership. Now he's brought with Joe Gomez. He hit a bit of a getting back to form, then that dip come back, he was looking a bit vulnerable. Then like Alisson, it's a bit I think it's a bit unfair saying about Van Dijk not being up to his expectation. I think it's the whole team at the moment trying to find a rhythm of play, especially with Núñez coming in. It's a different style for Liverpool. I find them type of strikers like Núñez and that, it suits Liverpool's play. So them type of strikers stand out against Liverpool because of the way we play with our full-backs going forward, our centre midfielder, Fabinho dropping back, making that defence into a free. Again, Fabinho, he hasn't really been playing as well. It's the whole, I don't know whether it's the Mane effect or whatever. And then Salah, you could talk about Salah also, about the expectations not hitting his height. So Van Dijk, I do think he has got more to his game than what he's been proven. But I do think he's not just backing out of challenges and not performing because of the World Cup. So I do think it's more of a team thing at the moment. But Van Dijk's a top world-class defender. He set that bar so high, so there's always going to be that surrounding when he does have a bit of dip in form or it doesn't go as well. Because players now are looking at it and thinking, can I take him on now? Where if you look at 2 seasons prior to that, nobody was taking him on. People were scared to go past him because they knew, I'm not going to get past him, so why is it worth trying it? Now, because of his injury and this is way back in, players have took advantage of that. Then they've had the successful getting past him. Now people are looking at it and going, is Van Dijk vulnerable in this position now? Can we get past him? And things have been happening, but it's not just down to him, I believe it's down to the team as well. But I do think he's still a world-class defender. And I do think the team will start picking up with the new style of play, what they're introducing now, with Núñez coming in. Then you've got like your RV Elliott, who's been playing, who's been living up to the expectations of what he done last season before he got his injury. Because if you look at it, he was starting before Jordan Henderson last season. I know we're talking about the age in the midfield at the moment with Carvalho and that. I think he's introducing him, but not rushing him too much. Like with Carvalho, he got a knock and he ended up getting taken off at half time for his own protection, maybe because he's seen what happened to RV Elliott and now he's reacted to it. So there is positives with the team. There is a bit of down to the play to what they've usually been playing the last couple of seasons. But I do think with Van Dijk and that, I think this World Cup has played a lot on people's minds with the players.
I hear that.
Because of the intensity and that are other players as well thinking the same thing. But you just have to wait and see.
You make some valid points there, Joe. Rohan, what do you feel about Virgil van Dijk's form this season? Has Joe got a point that the World Cup may be in his mind, in the back of his mind, is into not picking up knocks and niggles? How do you see things?
It could be. I think it's also more to do with the unsettled aspect of the side. I think even though I'm a really big fan of Harvey Elliott, I think having him on the right side of the midfield compared to having Henderson there, I think that shield for Trent. Henderson does a lot of the work that people only give him credit for once he's out of the team. But he offers us a lot in the form of protection. And I think from that, Virgil's probably made a couple individual errors, and because he's not made he's probably gone 2 years without making an individual error, so it's been blown up way more than it would the average player. So I think, he's made a couple errors, but I don't think he's now the decline of Virgil van Dijk or anything. He's still a top centre back. You ask any manager in the world, he'd probably be the first centre back they'd pick. It's just unsettled team, a couple individual errors, and it's just been compiled into a big thing. But I think we'll be fine. Hopefully we'll come out the international break without injuries, and I think as long as we have a settled run, and I still think our best midfield three is Fabinho, Thiago, and Henderson. But like Simon said, you need them to play games. So if we can get them three in the middle of the park, and we have a consistent side, we'll have a good run, I think.
Has your aspirations for Liverpool this season dropped after the first 7 games?
No, I still think other sides are going to struggle as well, whether it's because of the World Cup or like this congested season. I think everyone's going to have a bad run. I think ours has just come at the start of the season, so I'm not overreacting, I personally don't think that we're now out of the Premier League. We're still in the Champions League. The cup competitions haven't even started yet. So I think it'd be silly to write us off for anything yet or taper aspirations. And I don't think the players will have that mindset either, because they've been bang on it, and they can just look as close as last year, where they were 13 points behind January, and obviously there were a couple of games in hand or whatever, but they were behind City by a lot, and then to bring it back, and they only finished a point behind. So it's not like out of the realms of possibility. They just need to look at last year, what they achieved, and that as I say, the fat old lady's not singing yet. So they got to keep it going.
The problem is City have got stronger in that period. They've seemed to pull that away from the pack that little bit more. And with Liverpool losing that little bit of momentum, it's going to be hard work. What are you thinking, Chris? What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I think a thing that everybody should be worried about as well is that Erling Haaland is not going to the World Cup. So City are able to play him over and over and over now. They're able to use him, and then he's going to have that 6-week break while a lot of the other top players are over in Qatar, going to come back tired, going to come back either elated or deflated, whereas he's going to have like a mini pre-season in the middle of the season. So you do worry that he's gonna really, really be fresh for that second half of the season. The only thing you can see stopping him is injuries at the minute, and he has had a few injuries over his career, so it's never be ruled out. So I think that is the main worry for Liverpool's title challenge. And I agree with Rohan, it's far from over yet. The season's only just begun. There's only 7 games in. It's a long, long way to go. But the fear is that City will be even harder to catch this year. And to do that, as Liverpool have found out over the last few years, you have to be on it. You have to set records, points tallies to beat them. You have to be in the 90s. And if Liverpool don't get their form together, they're not going to be able to get to that to those 90s. So they need to come back from this international break, and they really need to have a big period between now and the World Cup to make sure that when they do come back on Boxing Day, that they're ready to go and ready to take on City.
Do you think some of the fixtures and being postponed and the congestion of it all has helped Liverpool a little bit? I know the Arsenal game and I think the Brighton game are postponed. I think the next game is probably the Rangers game in the Champions League. Do you think this has been helpful to Liverpool?
Yeah, I think they come back against Brighton. I could be wrong. The Chelsea game is postponed and the Wolves at home. It's hard to know. Look, obviously, it's given Klopp a bit more time on the training ground in the last couple of weeks, and they could put the focus into that Ajax game, which was an important one to get a result in the Champions League. Obviously, Ajax had lost a couple of players this summer and aren't maybe the force they were, but they needed to win after Napoli, so that gave them a bit more time for that. But I think they would have wanted to get those games played. Chelsea would have been a good point to play them. New manager in, they're not in great form either. Now they're going to have Potter in for a few more weeks. Whenever that game gets rescheduled, Chelsea might be in better form then. So I think that was a bit of a blow that they didn't get Chelsea at that point. But it's just going to lead to more congestion, as we've seen in the COVID seasons. And that's never good for anyone. So I think everybody's in the same boat. I don't think it's great for everybody, these cancellations, because it's just going to lead to more of a fixture clog down the line in the next few months.
Simon, have Liverpool peaked, this team in particular, under Jurgen Klopp? Do you think that they've had their moment? Are they now on the decline?
Oh, yes. I think they've missed the trick, not strengthening, as I've said, in certain areas that they needed to. There comes a point, you look at Man City, and I don't even think they're firing on all cylinders. I mean, they've still got to improve as well as they've done, but they win titles, and I know there's not an endless pit of money, but they win titles and strengthen. Pep and the club are not afraid to make harsh decisions. You look, they get rid of someone like Raheem Sterling, who had an unbelievable season, Euros, whatever, and was playing week in, week out, and they freshen it up and bring somebody else in. And I think I admire loyalty in football from managers, because let me tell you, there's not much of it, but sometimes that can be your downfall. And I don't think they're going to be outside the European sports, but I think they've certainly missed the trick, and I think the gap's going to grow bigger until they strengthen in the important areas of the pitch, or improve in the important areas of the pitch. You look at the top area of the pitch, they've got Mo Salah to come back. I'm not sure where he's been for the last 2 or 3 months, but obviously he's been away, so they've got him to come back at some point. Jota, who has been actually injured, who hopefully they've got to come back and firing. So they've got a lot to do, but my worry is that if you don't strengthen as a top team, you look at Man City, Man United back in the day, as much as it probably pains me, as much as the Liverpool fans to say this, that they won titles and were continued to be successful by strengthening and making ruthless decisions when player A had done so well, but they needed player B now to step in and take his place to kick them on to the next stage. And I think they've hit a little bit of a crossroads in the summer, and I think at the minute that they seem to have come to a standstill and not strengthened and not picked a certain way to go. I know they've spent money on a centre forward, but I think they needed quite a bit more strengthening in terms of players, top quality players in areas that are there for everybody to see.
Sentiment over ruthlessness. Has Jurgen Klopp not been ruthless enough with the squad, Rohan? In the summer, could he have trimmed some aging players and brought in some real killers? What's your opinion on it?
I think it'd be harsh to put the blame on him, because I think he did want more players, and this year's the first time I've heard him in the 6-7 years he's been here, where he's actually shown a bit of dissent to the owners. Mourinho or other managers show dissent when it's like you're using like Simon's car analogies. They get a Ferrari, but they want an Aston Martin. But Mourinho had got to spend my dosh, but he still was complaining that, I didn't get the even more. But Klopp, he actually so at the start of the season he said no, we don't need a midfielder. But I personally think that would just say, just for the public, just for the media, just to feed it out there, make it look like we're not interested. But I think they did want a midfielder. Because then a few weeks later, when all the injuries came in and stuff, he goes, "Yeah, I did want a midfielder, but it's not up to me. If it was up to me, I would get a midfielder." Something along those lines was his quote. So I think the job he's done with the resources he's had is ridiculous. And I think it's just the owners haven't been as adventurous as we'd like them to be, compared to, especially when you look at like a City or a United or a Chelsea. I think if he had owners like that who were a bit more loose with the purse strings, I think we'd have Jude Bellingham right now, or we'd have the players that he identified. I don't think it's a Klopp issue. Is what I'm trying to say. I think he did want extra players. He identified it, but I think he just didn't get the backing.
You've signed some really good players, like the lad from Fulham, Carvalho. What a player he looks like.
Oh yeah, he's top.
And what I liked about, rather than take him on a free, Liverpool actually paid the compensation that was arranged before the transfer, which I kind of like that. Showed class from Klopp. Are they suffering this season by not signing Jude Bellingham, not bringing in that marquee midfielder, as Rohan suggested? Simon, what's your take?
Here's a question. How many top 6 midfields would Fabio Carvalho starting in the Premier League?
Interesting.
I'm telling you now, it's 0. I'm telling you now, maybe in a few years he may do, but to have to rely on Fabio Carvalho and Harvey Elliott as your two in
same with Elliott.
midfield,
Just say that. Same with Elliott, yeah.
Not a chance of them two starting week. They might get the odd game, but they're not a chance of those two starting in a top 6, top 5 maybe. Maybe I'm being a bit harsh. Top 5. They're not starting for City. They're not starting for Arsenal. They're not starting for Spurs even. They are starting for Liverpool, obviously. They're not starting for Chelsea. And you look and you think, oh, really? And I understand that they have to plan for the future, but a club like Liverpool also has to plan for the here and now. They've got expectations that they must have seen City doing what they were doing, and the club itself. And I go back, I was probably harsh on Jurgen Klopp. Rohan's right that managers always want new players. Of course they do. It does come down to people above, but look, I'm sure there'll be decent players going forward, but I always look at it from a squad point of view. Would they get in any other team? And like, from my opinion and from what I've seen, and I've seen plenty, that them two don't start in another top 5 midfield, certainly in a 3-man midfield. Not a chance. I don't see that at all. So I do think that they are behind in terms of squad depth. And like I said, I'm sure Jurgen Klopp would have loved more players, but there's a management group, and they haven't managed that. Whether they went for players and didn't get them, who knows? But you must have a plan B. And I'm pretty sure that Jurgen Klopp, when he writ up his 22-man squad at the start of pre-season, when they're sitting in their office like every manager does, I'm pretty sure he had a few options ahead of Carvalho and Harvey Elliott as 2 central midfield players.
Chris, should Liverpool have spent big and recruited Jude Bellingham? Would he have been the missing piece in the puzzle to close the gap on Manchester City?
They've obviously got an interest in Jude Bellingham, but Dortmund have been categorical in that they said he's not for sale this summer. They've lost Erling Haaland. They weren't selling him. Sometimes there isn't a price on a player. I know Man United had that kind of from Ajax initially on Anthony, and they went and paid way over the odds for him. But I don't think Dortmund would have buckled. Bellingham is one they like. They're watching him. They're going to probably make him move next summer, but they are well aware that there's plenty of competition there. They won't be the only ones in the market for Jude Bellingham, especially if he has a very good World Cup in the next few months. They tried for Tchouaméni at the start of the summer. I think that's how you pronounce it. And he chose Real Madrid over them. And that can happen. That happens every team. That happens Manchester City. That happens happened to the big teams over the years. Like how many times sometimes Manchester United lost out on players to Chelsea, even though United were the better team at the time. So it was hard. The problem Liverpool have is that they, as Simon kind of said there, they have this kind of setup with Julian Ward there, who's taken over from Michael Edwards, and they get a target and they want that player. They waited for Van Dijk that summer when it looked like it was going to happen, then it didn't happen, and then they could have. There was a lot of pressure on them to go and get another defender that summer. Oh, you're not getting Van Dijk, get somebody else, and they said no, we'll wait, and got him in January, and look at what a signing he's been, even if he hasn't been at his very best this year so far. Doing this again, it's seemingly with the midfield and waiting, and it could cost them this season. Problem is as well with it is if it costs them this season and they don't win anything, do they look less attractive to Jude Bellingham next summer? That's the risk they're going to have. They're obviously seeing to take. And I'm not saying they're not going to win anything. As I said, they're still in everything. They can still win all four. But it's a risk what they're doing and not recruiting big this summer because, as we said, the midfield is aging. They've got a brilliant player in Thiago. He's one of the best players to watch in the league when he's on it. But he just doesn't play enough. He's just like too many little niggly injuries that keep him out. And they need him to have a run as well. When they come back from this international break, they need him to be fit and playing. They'll probably be secretly hoping that he doesn't go to the World Cup. And that'll be a boost for them because he can have a break then and get ready for the second half of the season. They need Fabinho back to his best. Somebody else pointed out, I think it was Joe, he hasn't been at his best, and he's been a brilliant player for them over the last few years. He's not a player that grabs the headlines. He doesn't score the goals. He just keeps that midfield together. And Joe said as well how he drops back in and he covers. And Jordan Henderson as well, another one who's been struggling with injury. He's back in the England setup. See if he gets some minutes for them, but he's massive in that midfield and how he covers the ground and how he protects the full backs when they bomb forward. They protects those areas, and they miss that as well. But they need them fit. They're getting older. They're not as reliable in a sense of injuries as much, and that's a problem now. So they need them to fit, and they need to get them to the summer. But next summer, I think they definitely have to spend big. Whether that's Bellingham or somebody else, they need a big midfielder in there.
Just coming to some summarising closing thoughts, Rohan, what are you thinking? What are your thoughts regarding Liverpool for the rest of the season?
I think they've got to set little checkpoints. So the World Cup, I think they've just got to set, let's be within 3 to 5 points of City. If you're within 3 to 5 points of City by the World Cup, and then after the World Cup, you got however many games left to play, still all to play for, because you're going to play City one more time. You can take points of them then. They just got to set little checkpoints, and they need to. The problem so far has been losing games, or dropping points in games that we should be winning, like the Fulham game. Like Everton game, I guess is a derby that can happen. But United, even if it's United at Old Trafford, we should. That was just a weird performance. They just come on the back of a 4-0 loss to Brighton. So set little checkpoints, and it's all to play for. The Champions League group, we should still get out the group. Obviously Napoli on the scoreline, it looks bad. But if you just said they've lost away to Napoli, that can happen. Any away fixture in Europe is tough. They just got to look at it in that perspective. That it's not all lost yet. Take each game as it comes, and just see where the chips fall come the end of the season.
Closing thoughts from you, Joe. Brace yourself, lads. We might be here for a little while. Closing words, Joe. What are you thinking?
No, I think the league's never over, is it? But the best thing about the Premier League, anybody can beat anybody. Like, you look at football teams now, there's no guaranteed result. But I do think once Liverpool get all the injuries back, I do think we will still be in with a shout. I don't think it's over yet. But that's the Premier League for it, in all honesty. It's the best way. It's the best league in the world because you can't guarantee nothing. If you look at Arsenal this season, this hasn't even been mentioned about Arsenal, what they're doing. It's took them a bit of time. They're starting to get a bit of rhythm. But if injuries happen to them, where their rhythm go? So if you can keep a full fit Liverpool side, maybe bring somebody in January as well. But we've got Arthur there who's working behind the scenes. He's playing for the under-21s at the moment. He's doing a lot behind the scenes to try and impress Klopp, not just for this season. He wants to stay beyond from what I'm hearing. So hopefully, because he come with a bit of an injury, I believe. Also, when he comes to Liverpool, he had something wrong with his ankle, and he weren't playing for Juventus at the time. So, and it's the pace of the Premier League also. With Jurgen Klopp, he doesn't like to rush anybody in. He likes to let them gel in, give them the time, not rush them. I think with Nunes, it's been a different scenario because we missed Mane. I do think he would have not pushed him as much in, because I think he would have known he's got this bit of attitude, bit of aggression behind him through the training sessions. And then Uruguayans, they play with the heart. They play die hard, don't they? They give it their all. So I do think Liverpool are still in with a shout, even with the Champions League and the other cups. So it's going to be interesting towards the end of the season to see where they really end up. But I do think next season, they have hold it out. I do believe they will get Bellingham next season. I do really believe that. I believe that he wants to come to Liverpool also. And I think it's Jurgen Klopp who attracts the players as well. I think he's got a big attraction to him. So when he's asking for a player, I think players are feeling privileged that he's wanting them to add to the squad of what Liverpool are playing. And then that gives the players confidence then, thinking the style of football, the attraction of the manager. Like we haven't bought the league. We're not a club just to go out and buy players. I know there's that frustration of wanting to buy players and stuff, but that's not the way Liverpool work. We've always kept to a script of making it as a business also. That's the way the owners have looked at it as well. They've looked at it as a business point of view, making more profits, valuing the company more. But a few add signings to it, it will be good. So I do think Liverpool this season, they still have got a chance, just seeing how they get on now and see what happens at the end of the World Cup as well for the second half of the season.
Chris, any rumours or anything speculating regarding players coming in for Liverpool January, or is there nothing really concrete in the pipeline as such?
No, I'd be stunned if they do any big business in January. I know they did Luis Diaz last January and that was a surprise, but that was because they had earmarked him for this summer and then Tottenham had agreed a deal with Porto, so they had to move. So that's the only reason anything would happen, I think, for them in January is if one of the players they're looking at for next summer, suddenly a club moves on him or he becomes available earlier. It's an unusual time for them to buy, but two of the best signings in the recent years, Van Dijk and Diaz, have come in January, so you never know, but at the minute, I'd be stunned if they did sign anybody in January.
Love that. Simon, any closing thoughts from you, mate?
I think they've got a fight on their hands to finish in the top four. I think as a squad, they're spent. I think they've put a lot of effort into the last 2 or 3 years. You look at the likes of Robertson, people like that now, I think they're breaking down more regular. I think they're spent as a group. And I think they're probably quite fortunate at the minute that 2 or 3 of the other clubs who they're competing with to the top four are also not performing to the levels. But I do think they've got a fight on their hands to finish in the top four, and it wouldn't surprise me if Liverpool finish 5th or 6th this year, I'll be honest.
Hear that. Gentlemen, I've got to say, Simon, I think you pushed Rowan over the edge with that prediction. You've thrown him over. Gentlemen, I've got to say, I thoroughly enjoyed today's show. It's great to talk about Liverpool's business, aspirations, the season so far. I look forward to catching you all up over as the season progresses, and thank you very much. If you are watching this on the YouTube channel, please download our app at Pitch Football and vice versa. Competitions, giveaways, shirts, fan analysis, you name it, we do it. So thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Chris, Simon, Joseph, Rohan, thank you very much. I'll see you soon.